Hey everybody, Brian here from the Cabinet Joint. Odd video today. There's nothing here to show you except this table. And that's the purpose of the video. We've done so many videos showing you cabinet assembly, and invariably we've been asked over the course of the last 8 or 10 years, hey, where'd you get that cool table you're building the cabinets on? So we decided to shoot a video not just to show you how to build the table, which we'll get to in a minute, what materials you'll need, tools. It's really not that hard, under $100 in materials and screws to build this table. But why is it important? And that's what I want to stress here as we open up this video. A lot of folks have been like, I don't want to work on the ground because I don't want to bend over and my back is bad or I have bad knees. Totally get it. I'm 56 and my body hurts too, so I want to be up off the ground. So the first thing they decide to do is try to build these cabinets on a card table or a kitchen table or whatever. And I got to stress, the number one thing that's going to affect the integrity of your cabinet assembly is the sturdiness of the substrate or surface on which you build it. If what you're building it on is unlevel, or if it's bouncing all over the place, you cannot get a good juncture between the front frame and the cabinet sides. You want something that's really rock solid, but also waist high. Since we do these over and over again in our shop, we of course built a table. You may not want to go through that effort for your 15 or 20 cabinet kitchen, but if you're going to spend $20,000 in cabinetry and appliances and countertops, an extra $100 to spend 35 to 40 minutes and build a table to get a better product in the end, it's probably not a bad use of your time. You're going to be going to Lowe's or Home Depot to buy materials for other things anyway. Just throw some of the stuff we're about to show you in the car, spend 40 minutes tops to build a table, and your assembly will thank you. We're going to get into the size. It can be any size you want. If all you're really worried about is the majority of your cabinets, which are bases and walls, you can build a table half this size and you'd be okay. So let's get to building this assembly table with you. First of all, you're going to need some 2x4s. How many you need depends on the size of the table you're building. Today, we're going to base everything on a 4x8 table that we're building, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to need a long 2x4 for each side, and then 4 cross pieces, 2 for the ends and 2 in the middle to give us good support. You're going to need a total of 5 2x4s to build a 4x8 table. You can see the one we're replacing below it is 6 feet long, so we only have 2 cross pieces. You could do that with 4 2x4, 8 feet 2x4s. Then I have back here, this is a 4x4, 8 foot, and we're going to cut our legs, 4 equal size legs out of this. Keep in mind with 4x4s, you can buy either pressure treated or you can buy a Doug fir one, which is what I have here. I find the Doug fir ones to be easier to handle. They're just a little bit lighter. You also have a sheet of melamine. This is call it 4x8. The melamine sheets, it's 3/4 thick, like a particle board core. These melamine sheets at Lowe's or Home Depot are actually 49 inches instead of 48. They're 49 inches by 97. So we actually took this sheet and trimmed an inch off either off the side and the end to get it to exactly 4x8. So bear in mind, everything you do is based on the sheet size. If you want to cut it down to a 7-footer, you can do that, and your cuts on these pieces of wood will get proportionally smaller. Know that the reason we use the melamine is because it's dead flat. If you have any kind of ripple in your base that you're working on, when you go to assemble your cabinets, the front frame is going to want to rock on those high spots. We want as dead flat a surface as we can get, and this melamine is that. It's dead flat. If you don't want to use melamine, you can get a thick sheet of that MDF, or they actually have HDF, high density fiberboard at Lowe's. It won't have this nice white melamine coating on it, but it will work as well. But to stay flat, it's got to be mounted to something flat. So when you're picking your 2x4s, you want to make sure you're sighting down the 2x4 both flat-wise and this way to make sure your board isn't doing this, and especially this way, it doesn't want to be crowning in either direction. If you have a crown, your plywood or your substrate is going to follow that, and it's going to either be bowed or humped, and that's going to affect your cabinet assembly. Let's talk about tools and materials. I'm going to start over here with my drills. I have a bunch of drills. You can use one drill and just swap things out. We have a bunch, so I'm just going to show them to you. I've got a bit with whatever tip I need, whether it's Torx or Phillips or whatever I'm using for my assembly screws. So I've got my tips with my impact driver. I've got a pre-drill bit, and that bit is 1/8 of an inch. The pre-drill you use is going to be somewhat dependent on the screws you're using. I'll get to that in a minute, but we use these timber locks, which is almost like a lag bolt. So I'm using a little bit bigger of a hole, but whatever bit size you need, just make sure you have one. And then because I'm using these timber locks, they come with this little hex head fastener, or not fastener, but tip. Comes in the box, so I have an impact driver ready to go with that so I can drive my timber locks. I got a sander here. You're probably wondering, what the heck am I sanding? We're going to sand the sharp edge of all this melamine all the way around after building it, just to kiss the edge and round it off. You can do that with a block of sander if you want. You don't have to have an actual orbital, but it just makes it easier. I have some blue tape. That's going to be used to hold down cardboard. We definitely will have ear and eye protection for running our saws. Over here I have the timber locks. Let me show you what they look like. These are available at Lowe's or Home Depot in the hardware and fastener section. It's like a lag bolt. Again, it's got that little 3/8 nut driver you'll need on the end. These are great because any drill bit, cordless drill will drive them right in, unlike a lag bolt where it takes a lot of torque and maybe a ratchet. These you can drive with a drill gun. If you don't have access to those, anything like this, any kind of a construction screw will work, okay? We're not gonna use these, I just wanna show you. So don't skimp, don't use a 2 or 2.5 inch, go all the way into that 4x4 using a nice long screw. So we're using, in this case, 4 inches. These are gonna be used to actually hold the melamine top down to our skirt and our spreaders. This is just an 1 3/4 Power Pro typical screw. You can use a sheetrock screw if you wanted to. I prefer a good wood screw. If you want to spend some extra money, get the proper screw. If you want to just use what you have in your house, just make sure it's long enough to go through your 3/4 melamine top and go well into the 2x4 skirt so that you're holding that top down nice and tight. Got a utility razor, mostly for scoring my plywood. When I put it on, I want to cut it to size. Of course, you need a tape measure, framing square to square up my cuts. If you're using a chop saw, that's not as necessary, but still good to have around. And then, of course, a marking pencil. What I'm going to do now is, again, we want to make sure we have our end pieces, our side pieces going here are the exact length of our board. So my board is 96, my pieces are 96. My cross pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, are going to be 3 inches less than that. So I'm going to go off camera and cut all these to 45 inches long. I'm going to get 4 pieces out of these, 45 inches long. These are my 2 end pieces. And then I got my 5th one here. It's already pre-cut out of a piece of scrap I had. And I'm going to cut my legs. This is kind of fielder's choice based on your work height. You can see I'm a tall guy. I'm 6'5". I don't like bending over real far. So I have these at 24 inches. We actually made them like 23.5 because I want to get all 4 pieces out of one 4x8. So once I have my 23.5 and then I put my 3/4 thick, I'm about 24.25 off the floor, which is just above my knees. That makes it a nice work surface. The back of a wall cabinet's here. Back of a base is about here. I'm not reaching too far. If you want to make it shorter, you can. I'll be right back and we'll show you how to actually build the table. Okay, I'm back. And now what I've done, I've already marked them out, but I just want to show you for folks who aren't familiar with real, framing kind of technique. We're just looking for support across the table. For a shorter table, you don't need 3, you can get away with 2, but in terms of the spacing, just try to keep them equal. So all I did was I have a 96-inch long side piece. I found the midpoint, 48 inch, made a mark, and I backed off 3/4 of an inch because of the thickness of the 2x4, and I made my mark here, and then I came in half the distance again is 24 inches on either side. And all I do is mark one of them, run your framing square across, making sure your ends are dead even, strike a line, same thing here. So we're lined up where we're going to put our 2x4s. This piece will then go over there, and I'll make sure you don't want to flip it end to end or your X's won't line up. You want to keep it over there, and I will just line up the side of my board. Same here. So if I line this board up with that edge, I'm going to do the same thing on this one. And now what I'm going to do after I got all my marks is get my pre-drill, and I'm going to go ahead and line all of these up with my line, putting the 2x4 where the X is. So I'm going to go through and pre-drill. Looks kind of like this, making sure my board is flat. I'm going to press this down because I want the top of this and the top of this to be as even as possible. And I'm just going to go through and do a pre-drill and another one. And I'm going to do that all the way down here, and then I'm going to screw those with my other drill. I'm going to screw all those with top and bottom, 2 screws per, all the way down. Now this whole thing will move, and I can slide it backwards and put my other side on. Okay, I had my helper come over here and give me a hand putting the box on the bottom, and we put the melamine sheet, which is still loose, on the top. Now again, the premise here is this sheet is perfectly square from the factory, so we're going to use that as our squaring. There's no need to square the box. It'll happen when I drive my first screw, square the box, and drive my second screw. So all I'm going to do is move this to cover my box and get my edges lined up. And then once I do that, I'm going to take a straight edge. You don't have to have a framing square, or in this case a sheetrock square or anything like that. just a straight edge, a straight piece of wood, and have your helper on the other side line up their end of the square with the screw holes that are there. And I have the screw holes that are on my end, and I'm just going to strike some lines across this, and those will be my nailing lines to go across my 4x8 sheet once I have it set up. But the first thing I want to do is get one corner lined up where I can lock it down and then square the box. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and come right back. Okay, I got the plywood positioned where, regardless of what it's doing on three sides, I've got this corner lined up perfectly. We made sure it's got the same overhangs. We basically squared the box. I'm going to take my drill gun that has the drill tip in it, and now I'm going to put one screw right on this corner. That's going to lock this corner into being square. You want to make sure your screw head goes below the surface. Countersink it a little bit. If you get a screw that has kind of teeth on the edges of the bottom of the collar here, it'll actually auger into the wood a little bit for you, but you want to make sure you're countersunk. That could become a scratch hazard on your finished surfaces of your cabinets if you're not careful. So now I've got one corner locked in. I can go through and just make sure I like where I'm at everywhere else. Good, good, good. So now I'm going to go through and put a screw in each corner, and then I'm going to mark my lines. All right, I've got my framing square. Again, this is a square, so I don't need a helper. If you're just using a piece of wood or whatever, you're going to want to have somebody line it up on the other side with your screw holes. And I'm just going to put a line there. Line there. A line there. We don't need them on the outsides because we already know where the side or the 2x4 is there. But I do need them here. And now I want to go through and pre-drill 3 more screws on either side and then 3 across each of these middles. This stuff is super rigid and flat. If you're thinking of like subfloor or laying down Luan where you got to go every 4 inches, don't need to do that on this. It's nice and flat and heavy. It'll lay perfectly stiff. Just got to put 3 screws across the middle of all of these. Okay, I went through and squared my box, marked my lines, and I made sure, just so it looks nicer, I made sure these screws are all on the same line this way. So I just came in equidistant from the end, and then one in the center. That way my screws aren't kind of staggered. Not that you'll see it, but if you're a perfectionist, that's a good way to do it. Now what I'm going to do is flip the box upside down, kind of the way it was originally, where you'll see the cross pieces, and we can go ahead and start putting our corner braces in. Okay, I took my corner supports, put one in each corner. They're all just sitting here free. I want to show you what I'm going to do with each one. Wedge it all the way up into the corner. Take your framing square and make sure she's straight up and down. You want to use a level, you can do that too. But I'm going to make sure it's straight this way and screw it in. Then I'm going to come over here and square it this way and screw it here. So I'm going to hold that, run a pre-drill, lock my first one in. Make sure she's still square. Okay, I'm still nice and square, so now I can do my second one. You want to make sure your screws don't overlap or you'll run into each other. In other words, if my 2 screws are the exact same level, I could run into it on the other side, so make sure you're a little higher or a little lower. Okay, so that is a rock solid corner post. I'm going to go through and do the other 4 the exact same way. Okay, all 4 of our legs are on, and we moved our other table out of the way. Now we have our new 8-foot table. final touches here we're going to show you, but before I do that, you want this table strong enough that you can stand on it. You might ask why that is. When you're building cabinets, you might find yourself having to stand up top and push a cabinet top or bottom down. And so it's good to be able to support your weight. The longer the table is, this one's 8 foot, you may want to put a center support in there. I don't think we'll need it, but I weigh 215 pounds and it doesn't flex much with me on it. But you do want to be able to stand on it, because if you've got a stubborn cabinet top or bottom where the dovetails are tight and you want to get your body weight on it, you want to be able to stand on this sucker. So keep that in mind. Now, the melamine, we want to dress this with this cardboard and do our little sanding on the edges. You might ask why we're dressing it with cardboard when all of our assembly videos show us building cabinets on the foam that the front frames come packed in. You're going to use that as well. But this is very hard and very slippery, so we don't want damage to the cabinet frame or boxes. If you hit it and tip a corner a little bit and it hits this, you could actually damage the wood. This has a little bit of a crush factor to it, so putting that cardboard on there gives you just one more level of protection for your finished product. You add that foam in there as well that gets thrown away after every cabinet, and you can keep that work surface fairly clean. That cardboard is irreplaceable, and if it gets nasty, you can just replace it with new cardboard. So what I want to do now is take my sander and go along and kiss all these sharp edges so I don't cut myself or damage my work product that I'm working on, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to put that cardboard on. Okay, I'm using layer sheets that came with our cabinets that were layered. You might have different cardboard based on how your job shipped. We receive them a little differently here at the shop. All I'm doing really, and you can do the same thing, is again, start with one corner of the perfectly square plywood on one corner and tape it down. And again, this is all made to come up real easy. And I'll tape the other corner. And now I'm just going to go ahead and cut that edge off. Once I have this thing nice and straight, at the end what you're going to have is blue tape running along the corners and on my seams, and that'll hold it all down nicely until I need to reuse it. Again, I can't stress the importance of this enough. Please do not just try to build straight on the assembly table without some extra layer of protection for your fine finished goods. Let me get started. All right, there you have it, an 8-foot assembly table. You might be asking why we even bothered upsizing from the one we had. We found that for building tall cabinets like 8-foot refrigerators or pantry cabinets, we were on the ground too much because that table, the ends were hanging past. So again, build the table you need to suit your space. You might be in a one-car garage, you don't have the space. Even a smaller table like that is a huge help for your basic walls and base cabinets. When you get into talls, you can assemble them on the ground, but we chose to work at our waist height because we do this over and over again. The other great thing about this table is you can always use it for something else. It might have been made for assembling our cabinets, but you can use it for any number of other things in your shop or garage if you have the space for it. So under $100, we've got an assembly table that is going to save us gobs of time. My guess is total time, if we take out the videoing and all that to explain it, I could have built this table in probably under 30 minutes. So hopefully that helps and you guys can make use of this in your own home project.